Hi, I'm David DiCerto here at the Archbishop Fulton J. Sheen Center for Thought and Culture. I recently had an opportunity to speak with Stephen Chbosky, director of Universal Pictures' new screen adaptation of the 2016 Broadway musical, Dear Evan Hansen. The film deals with mature, sensitive topics involving teenage suicide and mental health, and contains some plot elements that some parents may find problematic. But it also deals with themes that will resonate with faith audiences, such as forgiveness and fatherhood, hope and healing, and the importance of unconditional parental love. After the camera stopped rolling, Stephen shared his hope that the movie might help just one teenager, encourage one young adult to keep on going and realize that no matter how dark life gets, things will get better. Or maybe prompt a parent to walk down that hall and knock on their child's door to make sure he or she is okay. I hope you enjoy the conversation.
Dear Evan Hansen, today is going to be an amazing day, and here's why.
Have you been doing those letters to yourself with Dr. Sherman?
I've been trying to. Have you ever felt like nobody was there?
No one signed your cast. Now we can both pretend we have friends.
I'm sorry about my brother.
Have you ever felt forgotten in the middle of nowhere? I wish everything was different. Wish I was part of something. Wish that anything I said mattered. Have you ever felt like you could disappear?
Dear Evan Hansen.
Yeah, that's mine. I'll just take it. Wait, I need that back. Like you could fall and no one would hear. Connor took a letter from me and it was an assignment from my therapist.
Ew.
Even when the dark comes crashing through.
Connor's mother and stepfather are here to see you.
When you need a friend to carry you.
Connor wanted you to have this.
And when you're broken on the ground.
Dear Evan Hansen, he wrote it to you.
His last words, Connor took his own life.
Hey, what? I'm sorry, Connor didn't write this.
No, please. It says,
You will be found.
We didn't think Connor had any friends.
I mean, you really gonna tell these people that the only thing they have left of their son was a letter that you wrote to yourself?
so, you and Connor, tell us something, please.
Right. I started talking and you couldn't stop. They didn't want me to stop.
I'm putting together a memorial service. If you wanted to do something.
Connor showed me that I wasn't alone. Nobody is. So let that lonely feeling wash away. Maybe there's a reason to believe you'll be okay.
I didn't know that you were hurting.
'Cause when you don't feel strong enough to stand,
A lot of people feel like us.
you can reach out your hand.
People started sharing it. It's everywhere.
I don't understand what happened.
You did.
You don't know how much you've given my family and me. Were you ever actually friends with him?
I never meant to make it such a mess. I was trying to help. If you knew who I am, just how broken I am.
I already know you. And I love you.
I have to tell them.
So I'm here with Stephen Chbosky, director of Universal Pictures' screen adaptation of the 2016 Broadway musical, Dear Evan Hansen. Welcome, Stephen, and thank you for sharing some time with us today.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm very excited to talk.
Well, you know, watching this film, one of the beautiful phrases that Pope Francis has used to describe the church is a field hospital for the wounded. And many of the characters in past movies, whether it's Charlie in Perks About Being a Wallflower or Augie in Wonder, are all emotionally vulnerable or wounded in some way, and that's certainly the case here with Evan and Connor. What is it about stories and protagonists like these that attract you as a filmmaker, and what attracted you to telling this particular story?
Well, this particular story I saw on Broadway 3 years ago. I loved the show. I loved the music, the themes of it, the writing, the characters, and I saw it I saw in it a sorry, my family. I saw in it it's like, life of the pandemic. I saw in it an opportunity to really reach out to young people who could use, say, a glimmer of hope or a message to say that they are seen and understood and respected, especially with the pandemic going on and all the isolation that we've seen from young people. I was really hoping that this movie could reach them and, and help. That's ultimately what attracted me to it.
You're obviously no stranger to musicals. You'd written the screenplays for film adaptations like Beauty and the Beast and Rent, but was there anything daunting about taking over the directorial reins of a project like this?
No, not particularly daunting. No, what I loved about, I saw it as an opportunity more than a challenge. I would say. I love musicals. I have, as you said, written a couple. I've always wanted to try this. I've always wanted to stage a number and try to explore live singing in front of a camera, which I thought was very exciting to do. And so for me, even though it's doing a musical is a very difficult thing to do. I just genuinely enjoy doing it and trying to figure out ways to add certain fresh elements, certain intimacy to a musical that otherwise has not really been done before. That was very exciting for me.
Well, anyone familiar with the stage production knows the story revolves around the extremely sensitive subject of mental health and teen suicide. Evan is a high school student that's wrestling with severe social anxiety. And even when the musical came out, there were honest differences, strong opinions on both sides. Some people praised it for raising awareness of these issues, and some people had some fears that it might, trivialize a very serious subject. I think the film treats this subject, with a lot of sensitivity. Obviously, mental health is a growing crisis. The alarming rise in teenage suicides is a pandemic of sorts. And even Pope Francis has spoken recently about the need to better serve and minister to individuals who are struggling with mental health issues. And he's even spoken about doing what we can to remove that stigma that's usually associated with mental health issues. How do you see a film like this helping in that cause, even in a small way?
Well, I see, when I did my movie, The Perks of Being a Wallflower, and wrote my book, I saw firsthand how simply by talking about things, even not to judge them, but just simply to shed some light and cause discussions and awareness, that alone decreases the stigma surrounding some issues. I've seen firsthand how sometimes it's not even the trauma, or it's not the abuse, or it's not the mental illness, or the things that families face. Very often it's the shame about them, or it's the silence. The silence is where the cancer goes. And so for me, the opportunity here is by talking about some of these issues just very, very plainly, or using something like a musical form to talk about this in this profound way, or in this entertaining way, that alone can reach a young person. I cannot tell you, we've had so many screenings, so many people have talked over and over and over again. I remember a lady came up to me. She lost her son a couple of years ago. And even that, she said how this film helped her so much deal with her grief. And so to me, it's nothing but a universal good. And look, the polarized opinion, I understand some people think it's in poor taste to trivialize it. I personally do not think it trivializes it at all. I think what it does is it allows music and entertainment and other things that movies can do as almost like a Trojan horse to talk about the things that really, really matter.
Well said. Obviously you talked about having some screenings and hearing feedback from families who this personally affected. In prepping for a film like this, particularly a film that does deal with these very sensitive issues, what was the prep work? Did you speak with mental health, experts? Did you speak with families who had suffered these types of losses? What went into some of the preparation?
Well, some of the preparation, first of all, I did not write this particular piece. So already between Stephen Levinson, Ben Chbosky, and Justin Paul, and Ben Platt, there was a wealth of discussions that went into the Broadway show. Once we decided to adapt it, we brought in mental health experts. We spoke to the suicide hotline folks, people that specialize in teen suicide and some of these other issues. We looked at all of this. And we basically gave them carte blanche. We said, here's the script, here's the movie. If there's anything that you think could be triggering in a bad way for a young person, basically we give you carte blanche. We do not want anyone to use this as a means to suicide. We want to save lives, not take them. And so we'll cut whatever you say. And there were a few shots. They actually specifically said, this one's triggering, this one could do this. So whatever they said, that's what went, and it went, and we would take it out. That was the experts. In terms of my own, personal process, I sadly, I've known so much mental illness in my wife's family, my own. There's been depression, there's been suicide in my family. It was very close to home to me. I've also lost a very dear friend of mine 3 years ago to suicide. So in many ways, this film was my way of personally dealing with that loss, and hoping to use this particular art form to spare the next friend, the next mother, the next father, the next brother or sister, the pain of being left behind that act. So that's the process that went into it.
It's so interesting because obviously beyond the two central characters, Evan and Connor, it was very powerful to see the film, how the mental health issues at its core, and particularly the suicide, how it also affects everyone else in the family too, not just the young people who are struggling with it themselves. You talk a lot about how you were approaching it as a filmmaker. One aspect that as a father of a teenage son myself, I really appreciated the focus on the effect and influence of social media, for good or for bad, that's central to the film, particularly as we try to navigate this increasingly complicated world. I think the way you handled it, actually doing a film version gave you an advantage than even the stage version. So what were things that, it's not just you wanted to replicate exactly what happened on stage. You wanted to make it a stand on its own cinematic legs as well. How did you approach this, knowing the Broadway show and saying things that you wanted to change or work in a way that would speak better through the language of film?
Well, that's a very, very well said. I think what I did was I started from the love of the show. I love the show. And not to get too granular, but when you adapt something, and I've adapted things before, my own book with Perks, and R.J. Blasia's wonderful novel with Wonder, I always come from a place of fandom. If I love it, I want to give what I can to it. And so sometimes it's as simple as you look at a number like, let's say, Requiem, where the family, all three individual members of the family are mourning the loss of Connor in their own way. And on stage, Michael Greif, the director in Broadway, brilliantly just showed these three people. They're on the same stage together, but they're three spotlights. And I would look at something like that and I would think, okay, what are the spotlights in the real world? Is it Larry's office? Is it Zoe, the sisters? Is it school, her bedroom? I started thinking about the real world versions of what is on stage, very impressionistic. So I would just go about trying to find the real world equivalents and always keeping the tone. In terms of the social media, that was one of the biggest challenges, obstacles, hurdles for this. The social media aspect was because it's so technical and you're using something that's inherently technical to tell an emotional story. That was a challenge. And what we had to look for are ways that you could just turn a text almost into a haiku. You could turn something as simple as you're scrolling through a thing to show in about 5 seconds of screen time that Evan's father never returns his texts and doesn't doesn't call him back. So things like that, with a lot of delicate care and a lot of planning, I think ultimately led to the film that we ended up with, and I'm quite proud of.
As you may know, our art center here, it's a project of the Archdiocese or Catholic Arts Center. So I would love to there were so many themes here that I think would resonate with our audiences. Now, the story does involve teenagers, in a contemporary high school setting. So to accurately and honestly reflect that, there may be some elements or plot situations that some parents, may personally find problematic. But overall, the film, I think, touches on themes of suffering, forgiveness, in many ways, grace, healing, and in many of the most beautiful moments, really unconditional parental love for these children that are in pain. I think really resonates with faith audiences. And I was particularly struck by the anthem, You Will Be Found. And I want to get the lyrics right here, but the lyric that really struck me was, even when the dark comes crashing through, when you need a friend to carry you, when you're broken on the ground, you will be found. And, I think that called to mind the wonderful gospel story of the Good Shepherd leaving the 99 and going out and finding the lost sheep. I know you were raised Catholic, and isn't that at the heart of the faith about, God coming and trying to find us when we're at our most broken and lost state? Given everything that we've been through these past 18 months, you touched on this briefly, when so many people are feeling lost and alone and isolated, anxious, unloved, maybe like Evan, even unlovable. What do you hope is that viewers take away from this film?
Well, I hope that they take away, I mean, the old adage that we all understand, that without sin there is no forgiveness, there's no redemption. That these days especially, I genuinely, I feel such a deep sympathy for young people right now. We were young once, we were teenagers once, we made mistakes and we learned from them and we grew. Now these mistakes have like this permanent record to them, don't they? And the level of perfection that's expected of these kids is unsustainable and unfair. And yet they have to navigate this world. For me, to talk about these themes, to show somebody who does something genuinely terrible, the lie is not, nobody, especially Evan, thinks that this lie is okay. However, to make a mistake and then to do everything in your power to redeem that mistake, to make up for it, make amends, and grow, that to me is grace. That is finding the light after the darkness, or finding the truth that comes from the lie. And that's what I hope people take from it. It is very easy to judge and dismiss. We live right now in a time, and we all know this, we live in a time where if you go on Twitter or you go wherever it is, the amount of vitriol and the amount of anger and the amount of dismissal, almost as if the other side doesn't even deserve to breathe. This is not sustainable as a society, and it's not terribly productive. And so what I'm hoping is with a gray story, in this black and white time, it's a gray story, that a gray story like this could in fact help stop some of this vitriol and just show that somebody like Evan deserves a second chance. We all do. And that came from my upbringing as a Catholic in Pittsburgh, and also the way that my parents taught me. And I hope that it can it can help some young person find his or her way.
It's beautifully said, and so many beautiful moments in the film. And again, I want to reference that scene with Evan and his mom. I mean, it's such a touching moment, and it really does show that what ultimately saves the characters in the end, it is that love, whether it's a love, a friend for a friend, a parent for a child, a brother for a sister. It's that love is really the healing balm that kind of is woven through the whole film. Do you think that in many ways, what we just referenced about where we've been these last 18 months with the pandemic, that this film is even more timely now than it may have been back in 2016 when it first debuted on Broadway, that its message that speaks to sort of our culture of isolation and loneliness now, it almost has a different resonance than it had when it first came out?
I think without question, I think what you're saying is well said. Because of this isolation, when I signed on to this well before the pandemic, a year and a half before it happened, I was already taken by its themes and its ability to help young people and their families who love them and are trying to support them. But when the pandemic happened and we all basically started to live as Evan Hansen, as a fictional character lived, that we looked at him in terms of what does it feel like when you cannot leave your house? What does it feel like when the only way you can reach out to people, friends, family, and people that you love is through a computer screen? It is the devastation has been in many ways immeasurable socially for young people. The amount of depression. I heard a statistic a couple of weeks ago that that the anxiety that young people live with every day now is the equivalent of the anxiety that patients in a mental hospital experienced in the 1950s. How they measure that, I don't know. These are the experts, not me. But when I heard that, I thought that makes a lot of sense. So what we are going through and the mental health and mental health challenges that are coming from it are now more universal than ever, and people that may not have had much depression, people that may not have had much anxiety, now, young people, now are facing it in ways that they are not particularly perhaps equipped to deal with, because it's just not normal, is it? What we're doing right now as a society is not normal. And it takes its toll, and we all know that.
Yeah. It's almost, you bristle when people refer to it as the new normal, because there doesn't seem anything normal about it. Well, thank you for taking the time. Thank you for creating a film that tries to shed a little light, a little hope in these dark times. Again, Stephen Chbosky, and the film is Dear Evan Hansen, in theaters now. Thank you so very much, Stephen.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
I hope you enjoyed the conversation. If you haven't done so already, I encourage you to like us on Facebook, subscribe to our Sheen YouTube channel, and go ahead and click that bell icon for future notifications. If you can, I encourage you to please consider making a donation to the Sheen Center, and check out all our online content at sheencenter.org.